Welcome back to the Video Corner. Today we're talking about interlacing. In America and a few Asian countries, analog television used to have 525 lines of vertical video. That means that as the electron beams swept down the screen, it would draw 525 lines counted vertically. Now, really, a lot of those lines were used for control. They were the vertical blank and were drawn outside the viewable area of the picture tube, meaning that the lines that you could really see were about 480. This is where 480i and 480p come up as the modern terms for resolution. And really, it's about half of that, because 480i, which is what 525 line NTSC television displays as, isn't 480 lines at 60 frames a second. It's 240 lines at 60 frames a second and 480 lines at 30 frames a second. It's a compromise technology. Other videos have done really terrible jobs of this. I'm hoping this video ends up being a little more clear about it. You see, the designers of the television standards that analog television ended up using had three concerns on their mind. They were concerned with visual fidelity, how high resolution the picture was, flicker, how high frame rate the picture was, and bandwidth, how much signal they could actually feasibly send in a single second. At a frame rate of 30 frames per second, there would be obvious flicker and flashing to most people, which meant that it wasn't seen as ideal to have a low frame rate. Even film cameras, which supposedly shoot at 24 frames a second, actually show that frame twice in a projector so that you don't see the flicker effect. And in terms of resolution, they didn't want a low resolution picture. If they did, they could have just gone with mechanical television, like Logie Baird's design. They wanted a picture that you could really see everything on, and for that, they needed closer to 500 lines. But there's a problem. It was not feasible to send, receive, and decode 500 lines of television every 60th of a second. That high frame rate that they needed wasn't doable with the technology that they had when they were defining black and white television. So they had to choose between frame rate and resolution. Do you send 262 lines every 60th of a second, or 525 lines every 30th of a second? They didn't choose either. Instead, they got the best of both worlds. Only 30 full frames of television were sent every second, but the screen would still refresh at 60 frames a second because those frames were sent in halves. Every 60th of a second, half of a frame would have been sent to and drawn on a television. The TV would first receive and draw all of the odd-numbered lines on the display, and then all of the even-numbered lines in the next 30th of a second. This process was called interlacing, because you would lace half and then the other half of the image, interlace the lines, instead of drawing them all in a row. Instead of drawing them progressive. That's what 480p and 480i mean. 480 interlaced, 480 progressive. By doing this, because of persistence of vision and a bit of light persistence in the phosphors, they would get both the full 525 lines that they wanted to send and a flicker-free frame rate at the same time without using any extra bandwidth. Before we finish, I'm actually going to talk about this kind of TV, because interlacing is most well known nowadays for de-interlacing artifacts, which only happen on LCDs and OLEDs like this one. This one's an LCD, not an OLED. When a modern flat-screen television receives an interlaced signal, it performs a process called de-interlacing, where it stitches together the fields of video into single full frames that are drawn progressively as all at once on the display at 30 frames a second. This process is called de-interlacing, and it's awful. De-interlaced video has horrible jagged artifacts when basically anything is in motion. It looks worse than just doing the video interlaced, and it doesn't even have to exist anymore. When LCDs were first taking off, it was very difficult to give a big LCD panel a fast refresh rate. So most of them were locked to 30 hertz refresh rates, meaning that they couldn't do interlaced video reliably. Instead, they had to do this processing and de-interlace it. Modern TVs, though, usually have very high refresh rates and could definitely handle interlaced video if it wasn't considered standard to de-interlace it. If they were just willing to display those gap pixels, there wouldn't be any of those issues with jagged lines and weird blurred motion. The picture would look crisp and correct, how it was supposed to look on one of these. Anyways, that's basically it. I mostly just wanted to talk about interlaced video and old televisions, because a lot of people have given half explanations or poor explanations on YouTube before, and though this video isn't likely to replace any of those or even be seen by a fraction of the people that saw those, maybe someone will have seen those videos and now have a better understanding of interlacing after watching this one. Have a good one.